Hello, citizens. This is Councilor Gian-Carlo, Ward 9 TV. This is a two-part video on the two big financial challenges and the big financial conversations that your City Council has been having with citizens over the last several months. I want to just note that I'm standing here in the Cabin Brewing Company. We are in the heart of the barley belt, and of course the craft brewing movement is one of the sort of emerging new economy sort of business sectors that's driving Calgary into our future. So the two big challenges we have are the tax shift challenge, and then how do we build a bunch of the big things that we need to build. And this is taking place in the context of the City of Calgary and your city government, your city council over the last several years, increasingly tightening up the organization and trying to find increased savings and run a much more efficient organization. So in the face of this, as we've been getting leaner and leaner and meaner, and then taking that money and building a lot of things, especially in the down economy, we have a new challenge, and that's the tax shift. So what is the tax shift? The tax shift is the fact that for many decades we have enjoyed a huge subsidization of everything we do as Calgarians, both on the residential and the non-residential side of the tax roll, due to an incredibly powerful downtown real estate regime. We were not floating the city's finances on $100 a barrel oil, we were floating it on the real estate regime associated with $100 a barrel oil. And when commodity prices went off a cliff in 2014, and we had a structural change in the oil industry, and our big players in the oil and gas industry had to, radically change what they do, we find ourselves now in a situation where there's 30% vacancy in our downtown core. What that has translated to is a $12 to $13 billion loss in real estate values downtown. And what that means, because we collect property taxes based on property value, is basically a $300 million hole has opened up in our year-over-year operating budget. Now, over the last couple of years, because we've been getting leaner and meaner in terms of providing more and the same number and more services as your city government for less and less money, we've been able to mask that by taking those savings and stuffing it into that $300 million hole. Hoping against hope that the market would bottom out, that our vacancies would start to go away, that lease rates would become more competitive, and that would be reflected in property values downtown. That's not the case. So we have a unique in North America situation where 126 property tax rolls in the non-residential side have lost this kind of money, and we're realizing now that this is a structural shift in our economy. So the debate is, what do we do? Do we continue to take savings, which we're going to hit bone as we sort of cut in to the body here pretty soon? We can't keep stuffing one-time dollars to cover that hole. Last year and the year before that, we masked the hit by capping non-residential property tax rates at no more than a 5% increase. This year, with more money stuffed into the hole, about $74 million, we can only cap it at 10, and the next year we're out of runway. And all of that money year over year is going to come slapping back at us. So we created a bit of a bow wave. So what do? There are really a spectrum of things we can do. Oh, no, let me back up. What we have to realize is that under law, the tax rate gets spread across the class. So we have two classes. We've got the residential tax rate and we've got the non-residential tax rate. And because the non-residential tax rate is pulling in almost $300 million less than it was in 2014, we now have to spread that $300 million hole against or across maybe 37,000 businesses, non-residential tax rolls. On the residential side of the equation, we have almost 450,000 residential rolls, and the question is, how much do we spread the responsibility for covering that hole from 37,000 businesses into 450,000 residential tax rolls. And so on the one hand, we do nothing. We maintain the lowest residential property tax rates in the country. We move from about middle of the pack to higher in the non-residential tax rates. But because that we have to spread that across, there's going to be a whole number of businesses that, basically suffer crushing tax increases, like legitimate, can't keep your doors open. People are always complaining about taxes, but this is legitimate. And there are about 5,000, 6,000 businesses that quite legitimately would not be able to endure the pain. On the other side of the equation, we can spread that across the entire tax base. And if we were to do that, the average house in Calgary, which pays about $2,000, the average house in Calgary, middle of the pack, about $475,000 assessment, pays about $2,000 a year. If we were to spread that $300 million hole evenly across the whole base, the average house would balloon from $2,000 a year property taxes to $2,500 a year property taxes. It would be a one-time step shift, and there's challenges associated with that, because while we might be shielding some of the businesses that would be at the high end of the range, we'd also be shielding some of the big players, like the Cadillac Fairviews, like the Brookfield Institutionals, which, these tax changes are really a rounding error in their whole business performance. So we'd be raising taxes on everybody, shielding some of the big guys, saving the little guys. And then there's a whole bunch of options in between where we start playing with one-time money and doing this and that and the other thing. Quite frankly, I'm of the opinion that we've been I'm looking for a full shift. I think we have been deeply subsidized for decades by our downtown core. That subsidy is over. I think we all have to pay what we owe, and that'll keep us on strong footing so we can actually talk about building the things we need to build, and that's the next part of this video. But what's really important right now is to realize that your council, your experts in the community, we're all deeply divided, and we're all still trying to figure this out. We're talking to everybody, and there's a spectrum of things that we can do. What we've determined is that on March 18th, council, we're going to do something that we've never done before. We're going to take a big chunk of that public hearing of council, and we're going to dedicate it to a conversation with Calgarians where we present the do-nothing option, the full shift option, and 3 or 4 options in between. And we have a conversation about that. We talk about the principles driving what we're trying to accomplish. And we have some experts on hand to actually in real time respond to what they think the pros and cons are. Then we're going to have 2 weeks to have a big conversation in the community. And on April 1st, we have a strategic meeting of council that is set up specifically to talk about the tax shift. We're going to make a decision for the 2019 tax roll and set ourselves up towards a solution for the next 3 years of the budget. But what we really need to do is be laser focused on what our options are, whether any of those in the spectrum make sense, or maybe there's some kind of synthesis. Again, I'll tell you, I'm of the opinion that we all have to pay what things cost and take a one-time hit so that we stay firm and that we can continue to talk about building the things we need to build. What are we trying to build right now? That's the next part of this video. So this is Councillor Gian-Carlo signing off.